Tony Tucumbo Fernandez show is all about promoting the true life and success stories of African and Caribbean achievers around the world. If there's a product or initiative you wish to share, feel free to give us a call. The number is 0788 280 9005. A very warm welcome to all our listeners around the world. You're welcome to the Tony Tucumbo Fernandez show, promoting the true life and success stories of African and Caribbean achievers around the world. So if there's a story you need to share, feel free to give us a call. The number is 0788 280 9005 or visit our website at www.myfernandez.com. We have guests lined up all through the year, every single week throughout the year. And this week, we're moving all the way to the United States to speak to a very profound young gentleman who is a filmmaker, he's a rapper, he's a dynamic storyteller. He's also a cultural torchbearer, born in the United States of America, originally from Cross River State, Nigeria, and he's on our show tonight to tell us more about his story, his journey, his initiatives, and where he goes from here. So, Sammysossa, Samuel Achibong, lovely to meet you today for the very first time on the Tony Tucumbo Fernandez show. How are you feeling today?
Feeling amazing. Couldn't be better. I feel like I'm in the entering my prime of my career, and yeah, let's start there.
Beautiful. And before we move into the prime of your career, for the benefit of all our listeners around the world today, because we have listeners listening in from different countries around the world, can you just tell our listeners a bit about yourself, your background, and the things you're most passionate about in life?
Certainly. Well, I'll begin where, um, as early as the age of 3 years old, the people who know me in the United States in the Efik community, in the African community, I've been an entertainer. So I started off as with dancing. I've always had the ambitions of being an entertainer from learning from, and studying individuals like Michael Jackson and, Bob Marley and then even people in our culture like Ekweita, uh, Itang Inyang Henshaw, to name a few. So when I was young, my father, God bless the dead, he, would always incorporate just culture, whether it be uh what do you call it? Like Caribbean music, soukous music, reggae, Efik music, and then of course hip hop music. And then basically as I got older, I would see things that occurred in my environment, which was the streets and also but I had a respective household with my mom and my father growing up with both parents in the household. But, it was still chaos from time to time and our own hardships and struggles that we had to overcome. And early on, my mother instilled being a hustler. So that's basically, that's where I started, just, wanting to be an entertainer and entertaining and doing it as a young adolescent, if you will.
Yeah. And as as we get older every single year, we realize that we all go through certain journeys and struggles in life. It's part of life. Life is not perfect. It's filled with imperfections and paths to make us stronger. So talk me through the journey of because I was reading your bio 2 days ago and you spoke
Yeah.
about surviving the streets. Talk me through that journey of surviving the streets.
So as early as the age of 14 years old, we have what we call in America hopped off the porch. That means that you basically are privy and accustomed to the streets and you are either going to become what you call food or be the one demanding your respect. So I've always demanded respect as I got as a young, individual. Fortunately, some of it was not a choice. I had older siblings and not siblings, but relatives that were older than me that they would be hard on all of us, all of the young ones, like the people that were my age, we'd get punched, they'd make us fight, they'd make us just become tough, because the area that I was, born and raised, and it's called North Dallas, which is a high crime rate in Dallas, Texas, murder rate, so forth, stealing, robbery, and poverty. But I did live in a household where it was in the hood, but it wasn't, it wasn't an apartment, if you will. But I, interacted in this environment. I would see a lot of things growing up. I seen my first murder. I can't even recall, but a young adolescent, if you will. So just like typical things that you see on a day-to-day basis of people who grew up in these environments. I'm nothing new to. I'm not the first or the last uh individual that, had to overcome the streets or uh experience the streets to, grow, eventually evolve from.
I mean, what were the greatest lessons you learned along the way in that journey, and
Oh,
how
that's a
did it
great
change
question.
you as a person?
So the greatest lesson, so early on in 2010, I witnessed I didn't really witness, but my cousin got killed by his best friend. So, and I was there for the trial and everything. So it taught me not to trust people, have a guard up, because even your best friend could, do you wrong or wish harm on you and envy you and things of these nature. I learned a lot of things, and so one of those things is, loyalty. I value loyalty very much because it's hard. You don't get that easy going these days, if you will. What else? I didn't really make my profit in the streets. That's one thing. I was more so the enforcer, uh, violent, like I said, demanding my respect. If I, I keep it real with my audience, and I like to keep it real with the listeners here, the new listeners, because I learned on, not to be uh projecting out a facade or living a facade, just being yourself. Also, like people, I was kind of weird, like to the typical, because like I'm Efik and they call Akata, and I'm a hybrid, if you will. I never really fit in any environment because I was either too rough for an Efik individual, but I'd still like managed to be a leader and pillar in the association in the community, if you will. So like I had to work like twice as hard because it's like I had to find my niche crowd, and I don't think I truly ever found that. That's why I cultivated music, to find my niche crowd, because I never really was complacent with fitting, like being categorized in one crowd or whatever, if that makes sense.
Would you say this has had a very big influence in making your creativity more original and being the best version of yourself?
Certainly, that's a great question. Let me harbor on that question and think real quick. Definitely, I would say that it cultivated the songs that I made because I live off of real life experiences. Like I said, I learned, like I like soul music. I like to cultivate music. I'm very a spiritual being as well. So everything that I like promote or push has intent behind it. It comes from real life situations. Either it's my life situations or it's someone close and near to me that I tell those stories and, cultivate these songs. So it's like sometimes if I don't have a life experience or a story to tell from my life or someone's life, then I'm not going to just put out anything, if you will.
And you've also been described as a cultural torchbearer, especially
Certainly.
within the ethnic communities in the United States. How talk us through that?
So ever since 1998, I was born in the year 98. Ever since 98, we've had association here in America called the Efik National Association. Uh, in 2011, we had a split, so there was two factions, and I happened to know both sides. There were people that were coming um since the beginning, and then some people came like in the late 2000s, like the 2010 and so forth. So 2011, I think in 2009 we start having our youth ethic executive board of, like from a president to a vice president to secretary and treasurer. We thought it was imperative, vital to cultivate that for the youth. So I was a torchbearer in the sense because one before that, I was the one, performing and putting on for the youth, performing at every national convention and side quest. And then fast forward into 2000 and I think 16, I became the vice president. Served for 2 years. You're 2 years. You get a term of 2 years. So the president gets a term of 2 years. So I served under the president. Her name is Stephanie Trimnell. And then I became the president. I got voted as elected as a president 2 years after that, and I served it for 2 terms. So I'm a torchbearer in that sense because I have to become the middle ground for the youth and trying to communicate to the elders, as difficult as it is and as it was. And so now we are here as one. I was one of the pillars who helped amend, whether people like it or not. I managed Efik pages, Efik masquerades, Efik voice, the Efik national youth pages, the national pages. I was the one that cultivated those. So on a social media sense, I'm an influencer and a torchbearer in that sense.
Now, you take a lot of pride in a ethic culture. What does a ethic culture mean to you?
Well,
And how
well,
do we
certain
stand out compared to many cultures around the world?
Well, first of all, I know where I come from. My grandfather and other relatives were on the throne. They served as the Abang of Calabar. So the latest Abang, the Adidem, late His Eminence, late Adidem Otuakbengifa, Otumeseme. And so I am from that. I'm a descendant of uh his line lineage of I can't think of the proper terminology, but you guys get what I'm saying. So, early on I learned that I was a prince and had to carry myself. Even though I was growing up in the streets, I always carried myself with certain dignity and postured myself, high. So I wasn't really like I've never really been not confident. I've always been confident and embraced, all the scars that I had to make me who I am today. So Efik being Efik, is knowing where you come from. I get the luxury of knowing, like you mentioned, we had slaves and we were slaves, and but I get the luxury of knowing where I come from in the motherland. Some people, Black Americans or wherever you're Black from, you could be in Germany or wherever. We ultimately, I believe, all came from Africa. So just knowing that I come from Africa and know what's specific, I carry that torch because I feel like if I don't do it or others don't do it, then the culture will die here in America if no one cares about it. So I choose to care.
Fantastic. Let's talk more about your music as well. What kind of subject matters and themes run through your music?
Certainly. Great question. I talk about, motivational. I cultivate motivational. I talk about violence. I talk about love. I talk about heartbreak. I talk about uh broken friendships. I talk about motivating you to get money. I talk about things that occur in the world. I talk about my identity of who I am, me being a prince. I talk about, me being Efik. Not so much Efik because some people here in America don't even know, but I sprout out certain things that you question and it's mystery. If with Efik, we have certain mystique about us, So those are the things that I like to talk about in my music thus far. And as I grow, it will keep expounding.
Mm. I'm just listening to you right now, and you've told me quite a number of stories, you know,
Yes.
and it makes me wonder, how adaptable would you describe yourself as a person?
Well, I think experience is the best teacher for life. So I was always been going to like many different schools, many different environments, and that's how I was able to get a mesh, a melting pot to what was the question again? Sorry, one more time.
How adaptable would you say you are as a person?
Yeah, so that's what made me be able to adapt because I actually had to go to these different environments. There were some points where I went to an all Catholic dominated Spanish uh environment. And then I went to a Turkish school. All dominant, half was Turkish, half was black, half was Mexican and so forth. But or black, it dominated with just so many different. Like even the church that I attend is mixed with different nations. So I've always been able to adapt, and I've also been privy. I went to school also. I'm currently getting my master's degree. So if I want to speak in a slang to talk to cater to one people, or if I want to be corporate and proper or whatever, I'm able to adapt. It just depends on where I'm at and or how whatever's being, portrayed or, to me. So yeah,
So,
that's how I'm
for
able.
all the benefit of all our listeners listening in today who want to know more about you, your music, your brand, first and foremost, what initiatives have you got lined up in the next 6 months? And how can people follow you on social media handles?
Well, we can start with how you can follow me. You can follow me everywhere at the Sammy Sosa, spelled TheSammySossa, all together. Secondly, um, what you can expect from me, my music is I'm more so I've been recording a lot and putting out singles and putting out visuals, putting out content, so you can expect more of that. But I've also been doing, like getting my business right, business in order, publishing. I just did my publishing. Um, Maybe you could expect my music in my movie that will be coming out. Um, to be determined, but possibly next year. But my music will be film scored in there for certain. So those are just a few things that I can publicly announce right now.
Okay, and we have your handles just below the screen here. On a very final note, Sammy, what message do you have for all our listeners around the world today?
I want to say first and foremost, if you have any regrets or before you regret anything, make sure that you keep God first, and secondly, follow your dreams. Don't let anyone deter you away from your dreams. And if you get deterred, you're never too old to follow those dreams. As long as you have the willpower and the ambition to go get something, I'm one of the living proofs that if you follow your dreams, they come true. And if you work hard, if you do those things, that's the formula that a lot of people think is competitive, not to give out what we call game, or and that's why I'm here. That's what my music label, that's what my whole identity, my brand stands for. Is no, they say motto left, they go left, we go right, motto should have flee. So that means you just do you, and be confident with it.
Doing you the best version of yourself
For
and
sure.
originality. Such a pleasure having you on today. Keep up the amazing, amazing work.
Thank
God
you.
bless you always. And we'll
Likewise.
definitely catch up with you soon.
For sure.